Some big breaking news coming in. Suspected terrorists have set off a bomb and opened fire at a mosque in Egypt's restive northern Sinai, targeting supporters of the security forces attending prayers there. According to the Egyptian media, at least 50 people have been killed in that attack. That's what we've got for you lined up right now. The latest coming in from Egypt, where there's been a bomb explosion by suspected terrorists. It's happened at a mosque in Egypt's restive northern Sinai. WION senior correspondent Ramesh Ramachandran joining me live on the broadcast from the newsroom for more on that story. Ramesh, good evening. What more details can you share with us at this point?
Good evening, Aisha. This is what we know so far. This is news just coming in that a mosque in Egypt's northern Sinai province was attacked by unknown gunmen, more than one presumably. This happened during the noon prayers at the mosque, the Al-Rawda Mosque in Bir al-Abid, west of Arish city in Egypt Sinai province, and according to the local media, at least 75 people are reported injured, but Reuters is now reporting that at least 50 people may have been killed in this attack. We don't know who is behind this attack. Nobody has claimed responsibility so far for this attack, but news just coming in that at least 50 people are feared dead. This is according to Reuters, and local media, especially the Daily Al-Ahram, is reporting that at least 75 people are reported hurt, and this is quoting the Health Ministry of Egypt spokesperson. And eyewitnesses have told the local media that there could be dozens of casualties. Eyewitnesses also reported ambulances ferrying the wounded from the scene to nearby hospitals. So this is the latest coming in from Egypt.
Right. Ramesh, we're also given to understand that supporters of the security forces were possibly attending prayers at this mosque when this attack took place. But considering this was Friday, it was noon prayers, obviously there must have been a number of civilians also at the site. What sort of tensions are ongoing in Egypt when it comes to the divide, let's say, the sectarian divide? Do we have an understanding of that as well?
Well, Aisha, like many capitals around the world, Egypt's capital, Cairo, or its other towns and cities are not entirely immune from such terror attacks. Such attacks have been known to take place inside Egypt, in Cairo and other cities, in Alexandria, for instance. And in some of these cases, the so-called Daesh or the so-called Islamic State had claimed responsibility for these attacks. So we need to wait and watch as to which group claims responsibility for this attack, which happened in the northern province of Sinai. But that said, the Daesh is active in Egypt and in North Africa and parts of West Asia. So clearly, it remains to be seen who was behind this attack. But the casualty figures indicate that this has to be the handiwork of a professional, terrorist group, including possibly Daesh.
Does it strike you as strange, though, Ramesh, that it was a mosque that was targeted? We've heard, of course, of attacks on Christian minority groups in Egypt over the past few years, but this time it's a mosque.
Indeed, places of religious worship have been known to be targeted by the Daesh in many countries around the world. So it's not entirely unexpected and surprising that they chose this mosque, the Al-Rawda Mosque in Bir al-Abid in Sinai province, for this attack, in which at least 50 people, according to Reuters, may have perished in this attack, and more than 75 injured who have been taken to neighbor hospitals. So religious places of worship, including mosques, have been targeted by the Daesh in the past, including in other countries, namely Afghanistan and other countries in West Asia too. So clearly, this particular mosque is just the latest victim in a series of such attacks on religious places of worship around the world, including in Egypt.
Right. Stay with me, Ramesh, for those of our viewers who are just joining in on the broadcast. This is the latest that we've got from Egypt. That suspected terrorists have set off a bomb and opened fire at a mosque in Egypt's restive northern Sinai region. They've targeted supporters, apparently, of the security forces attending prayers there. According to the Egyptian media, at least 50 people have been killed in that attack. Right, that is what we've got for you at this point in time. We're also taking a look at social media, which is exploding with number of tweets on this developing story. What we can confirm for you at this point in time is that 50 people have been killed, 75 people are reportedly injured. This attack taking place at around noon prayer time in a mosque in Egypt. As my colleague Ramesh Ramachandran was pointing out for us a short while ago, this is not, let's say, surprising. In the past, outfits such as Daesh and others have attacked places of worship, be those mosques, often frequented by people from minority groups within the country, not always Sunni mosques that are attacked, but really speaking, places frequented by Shia worshippers, by also worshipping or rather worshippers who believe in the Sufi faith of Islam. We're still trying to get more details on this emerging and developing story coming out of Egypt. Ramesh, also for our viewers who are just joining in, if you can give us an idea of the sort of situation, the political situation as it pertains to Egypt right now. It has seen a tumultuous last couple of years with the domestic politics, of course, but is Egypt frequently targeted by, let's say, Islamist forces? Is this something that's happened in the past as well?
To have been very active in Egypt and North Africa generally. And talking about Egypt in particular, since 2011, Aisha, since the so-called Arab Spring broke out in parts of North Africa and West Asia, Egypt was at the center of those protests. And we saw what happened in the Tahrir Square protests in Cairo and elsewhere in Egypt and other parts of North Africa. And to my mind, what happened in Egypt was seminal in the sense that it exemplified what the Islamic Brotherhood was all about and how the popular perception went against the Islamic Brotherhood, especially this president who was elected, by the way, Mohamed Morsi, but who was deposed and the military intervened. So that, to my mind, is a seminal chapter in the history of Egypt in particular. But that said, the Islamic Brotherhood is known to be active even today, but although not to that same level as it was obtaining in 2011 and in the immediate aftermath of the Arab Spring. And Egypt has since then been been witness to several attacks, including, as you mentioned, on minorities, including the Coptic Christians and the Coptic Christian Church in Alexandria, for instance, in Port Alexandria a few years ago. So minorities and majority community alike have been known to be victims or targeted by such terror groups, including the Daesh or the so-called Islamic State. So we'll have to wait and watch as to which group is behind the latest terror attack that's targeted this particular mosque in Sinai province, which, as I said, according to Reuters, has claimed at least 50 lives so far and at least 75 reported to be hurt and have been recovering in various hospitals in the Sinai province. So the Egyptian government has not yet made any official statement so far. So we are waiting for the Egyptian government to make a statement, official statement in this regard any time now. But according to reports, as I mentioned, 50 are dead, 3 are dead, and more than 75 hurt in this latest attack.
Absolutely. Stay with me, Ramesh. I'm also picking up some more details. Of course, just to remind our viewers, this is information that is coming in from various social media accounts. Twitter, of course, is looking at this story in detail as well. Of course, a Twitter user has pointed out that this is possibly a Sufi mosque that has been targeted in North Sinai. The bomb mosque is, of course, believed to have belonged to a Sufi tariqa. We're also hearing conflicting reports on the number of dead and the mode of the attack. On the one hand, we are seeing a number of tweets reporting that terrorists besieged that mosque using 4 vehicles and started shooting at worshippers who had gathered there for afternoon prayers at the mosque. However, other local media is also saying that it was a suicide bomber that blew himself up inside the mosque. Conflicting numbers so far, as Ramesh was pointing out. Reuters, of course, saying that 50 people have died who've been killed in this brazen attack on a mosque in the North Sinai region in Egypt, and 75 odd injured. We're still waiting for details on the exact numbers. Shaira Amin, senior journalist from Cairo, joining us on the phone line. Shaira, thanks so much for speaking with us. If you can fill in the gaps, give us more details on what's happened at that mosque.
Good morning. Information is rather scanty. We don't know very much, except that there has been a bomb explosion in a mosque in North Sinai, in Arish. And this is a mosque that follows the Sufi tradition. What we know is that there are tens of casualties, The latest figure, I believe, is 50 injured. We don't know yet if there are any fatalities. But as you know, Friday is a holy day in Egypt, and Muslims go and attend Friday prayers. So the mosque must have been packed. And Al-Arish has been the scene of violence, most of it from ISIS-affiliated militants. This is what we know so far.
Right. Shaira, if I can also ask you to give our viewers of an idea of what sort of place Sinai is. Is it a very heavily populated region? And what sort of access to emergency services exists there for the people who've been injured in this attack?
Sinai has been a very volatile region for the last couple of years now. It's just a hotbed of Islamist militants, and basically security forces are at war in the Sinai. There's very little access to journalists. We have not been able to go there, and we have to rely on information from military sources. In fact, there is a law that we have to get the information from military sources. Otherwise, journalists get penalized if they don't.
Right. You said that this mosque follows the Sufi tradition. Is Sinai itself home to a large mix of different sects and different minority groups?
Sinai is home to the Bedouins of North Sinai that have long suffered marginalization and discrimination at the hands of successive governments from the days of President Hosni Mubarak, the former president who was ousted in the 2011 uprising. They've been long neglected and discriminated against. So there is the local population that very recently the Sisi government demolished the homes of the people on the Rafah border to make a zone in that area because of the rockets that were scantily. Sometimes there were rocket attacks on Israel from the Rafah side of the border. So now what the government has done is demolished the homes and evacuated the area, and there is a lot of anger in the Sinai because these people are homeless, because they're discriminated against, and because, you know, they suffer at the hands of this government.
Has it seen similar attacks, Shaira, in the recent past, specifically on mosques?
Nearly every day there has been an attack in North Sinai, mainly on security forces and on Christians in the area. The Christians have had to flee Arish and other towns in North Sinai to places they think are safer for them. But yes, there have been attacks on mosques before. This is not the first of its kind. But this one, I think, is more fatal because of the numbers of casualties so far.
Right, Shaira, I understand you're pressed for time, and there are very sketchy details at this point. But just one last question before we let you go. How exactly does media in Egypt react to news stories such as this that come from places like Sinai? Is the fact that at least 50 people are reportedly have died in this attack going to cause perhaps local media to pick up on the story more, or are all these attacks, the ones that you've mentioned for us, given equal, let's say, space on mass media in Egypt? I
am afraid that journalists in Egypt are waiting for information to come from military sources. Because of the law criminalizing any kind of reports that come from outside sources. But I've had to make calls with local forces in the Sinai to find out more. what is happening and to rely on media sources as well. The reports is slow coming in right now. So we're waiting to hear more. The story is yet unfolding. And I will let you know if there are any updates.
Shaira Amin, appreciate you taking out the time to speak with us and bringing us those details. Once again, for our viewers who are just joining in, sketchy details so far, but what we are picking up is that 50 people have been killed and more than 75 injured in a brazen attack on a mosque in the Sinai region of Egypt. At least 50 killed is what we're hearing. Remember, this attack took place at the time of noon prayers at a mosque, and a time obviously when it's believed that there were a number of worshippers who had gathered there for Friday prayers. All right, we're going to stick with this story as Shaira was pointing out for us a short while ago. The Sinai region is a restive region in Egypt. She says that it's seen similar attacks on mosques and more specifically on security forces and the minority Christian groups almost on a daily basis in the Sinai. A number of the Christian minority groups have in fact decided to leave the region altogether for fear of their safety, for fear that they could be attacked again. This particular attacks taken place at a Sufi mosque in the Sinai region. It was packed with worshippers at a time when Friday prayers were going on. Remember, this attack has taken place at around noon local time. Conflicting reports on how exactly the attack took place. Some are saying that the mosque was attacked by 4 vehicles with terrorists on board. They started firing indiscriminately at worshippers gathered there. Other reports are saying that it was a suicide bomb attack that saw the suicide bomber walk into the mosque and blow himself up. We're still trying to confirm those details for us. Edward Kosin, a journalist, is also joining us on the broadcast right now from Cairo. Edward, thank you very much for speaking with us at WION. If I could ask you, sir, to give us more details on what's transpiring in the Sinai region right now.
Well, details on the mosque are still very brief. It appeared to happen around noon, which is the Friday prayers, the most important prayers in Islam. So probably the mosque was very full with a lot of people, and it seemed there was an explosion in the mosque. And when people went out of the mosque because of this explosion, there are reports of there were gunmen outside of the mosque shooting at people coming out of the mosque. The ministry has said there are 75 casualties, so dead and or injured, but it is unclear how many casualties there are exactly. But it may be that, yeah, there are dozens of victims. But we have to wait for more precise details to come out.
Yes, we're also hearing that this was a Sufi mosque that was attacked, Edward. Is there a great degree of tension between the Bedouins, the Sufis, and of course Christian minority groups in the region?
Well, in North Sinai has been a very restive place for 4 or 5 years now. There a branch of ISIS, of the Islamic State group, that is fighting an insurgency against the army in North Sinai, and usually they target army and police and sometimes Christians, but they also sometimes target a Sufi priest because the Islamic State has a different ideology and different idea about Islam than the more moderate Sufis. I'm not 100% sure if it's actually a Sufi mosque. But it is. If it is a Sufi mosque, it could be that the Islamic State wants to target Sufis in North Sinai.
All right, stay with me, Edward. I just want to tell our viewers that the visuals right now on their screens are the latest coming in from that attack that's taken place on a mosque in the restive Sinai region of Egypt. Edward Kosin, a journalist who works in Cairo, is joining us on the broadcast. Edward, if I can ask you also, what sort of security presence is in place in the Sinai region, given that it's such a restive area?
What the security presence is there?
Yes.
Well, the Egypt has been trying to control this Islamic State insurgency in North Sinai for the past 4 years. When Sisi came to power, it was one of his main promises that he would root out terrorism in Sinai. So there's a lot of army and police there, but it's completely locked down for journalists. So it's very difficult to get independent information from North Sinai itself about the situation. Nobody really knows how much the army is actually in control or how strong the Islamic State is there. It's very unclear. But there are reports of attacks in that region coming out every week, nearly every week. And then usually it's attacks against police and army patrols. And the army is also very often saying we killed so many terrorists and we attacked terrorists and we found them or we arrest them. But it's very difficult to get independent confirmation about what's actually the situation in that area.
All right. As you're pointing out, it seems that these sort of attacks are a regular, almost a daily occurrence in the North Sinai region. Edward, has there been an exodus, therefore, of a lot of people from the region? Are they trying to get out, given that the situation is so bad?
Well, the army is creating a buffer zone along the border with Gaza, because North Sinai borders to the Gaza Strip in Israel and Palestine. And Egypt says that a lot of the terrorists come out of Gaza. So they are creating a big buffer zone between Egypt and Gaza, and they are flattening and bulldozing a lot of villages and evacuating the population. So there's a lot of people from North Sinai who are just forced out of their houses and moved to other locations. So there is people being displaced.
All right, Edward Kosin, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing your perspective with us and giving us those details on a developing story coming out of Egypt from the North Sinai region. My colleague Daniele Pagani also joining us on the broadcast. Daniele, give me a second before I take my question across to you. I just want to remind our viewers who are just joining in, this is the big breaking news coming out of Egypt. Suspected terrorists have attacked a mosque in Egypt's restive northern Sinai region. We're hearing conflicting reports. One says that a suicide bomber went in and exploded that bomb within the mosque, causing casualties galore. The other report says that the mosque was besieged by terrorists who were vehicle-borne, and they started shooting at worshippers gathered. This incident has taken place at noon time, at noon prayers on Friday. Remember, it's a holy day in the Islamic calendar. Friday is when most prayers take place. Most people gather for Friday prayers. At least 50 people have been killed. At least 75 are reportedly injured. Daniele Pagani, my colleague, joining us on the phone line for more. Daniele, we're hearing from Egyptian journalists that this is a highly fortified region, given how restive it is. Who are the main supporters, if I can ask you, of this insurgency against security forces gathered in the North Sinai region?
Well, the North Sinai region, Aisha, is a region which has been in turmoil for a while. It's not a peaceful region. It's a desertic areas where often security forces, Egyptian security forces, get attacked. For the time being, no one has claimed responsibility for this attack, but the Islamic State has started a campaign of attacks in the Sinai region of Egypt since at least, I would say, 1 year. This attack comes right after the fall of the last Islamic State bastions in Syria specifically and in Iraq specifically, and especially it comes after a major deal which has been struck in Raqqa between the Syrian Democratic Forces and between the Islamic State, where more than 250 fighters of the Islamic State have been allowed to leave the city of Raqqa without surrendering their weapons and explosive devices. So this could be a possible fallout of this kind of deal, because it's not impossible for those who are fighting in Raqqa to have crossed the desert areas and reached the Sinai, which is a little bit of no man's land, just so to say.
Right, and pardon me, Daniel, if I can also ask you, what sort of mix of sects and groups reside in regions like Sinai, and is there a lot of sectarian tension that's also misutilized by the Islamic State and other affiliated groups?
Well, the sectarian tensions, it's not something which it's there. Obviously, if this is the Islamic State attacking, obviously their major aim is to create sectarian tensions. As I told you, the Sinai region is really a sort of a no man's land where several groups, several rebel groups have been fighting against the Egyptian security forces, but mainly in the last, I would say, months, if not 1 year, the Islamic State has been pretty active there, often attacking security forces of the Egyptian army, or especially the Egyptian police. The Sinai region is also a place where there are constant conflicts between smugglers and criminal organizations and the Egyptian security forces. But clearly, this is not the case, because there is absolutely no interest on the side of a criminal network to attack eventually a mosque. So this is why I'm saying that this attack probably is an attack similar to what is happening in Afghanistan and what is happening in other places of West Asia, which could have been carried by the Islamic State. I want to remember that no one has claimed the responsibility, so we are just analyzing the context.
Sure.
But this may well be an attack carried out by the Islamic State.
All right, so we'll wait for more confirmation and more details on that attack. Daniele, thanks very much for joining us this evening.